What is up, beautiful people? This is Christian from the Successful Spiritualpreneur podcast, and today I'm very honored to have Asha Nayaswami on the podcast, and she is a special gem on this podcast, and she has been practicing and teaching the principles of self-realization for over 50 years. And for those of you who are not familiar with the self-realization principles, they stem from Paramhansa Yogananda. And in 1969, at the age of 22, Asha met her spiritual teacher, which was Swami Kriyananda, and he was a direct disciple of Paramhansa Yogananda. And if you haven't heard from Paramhansa Yogananda, better look him up because he is the author of the Autobiography of a Yogi. And very interesting fun fact, that was the book that Steve Jobs wrote in his will to give to every single employee of his company, which you certainly know because it's called Apple. Yeah, and from that time on, Asha has dedicated her life to Kriya Yoga, meditation, devotion to God, and service to others. Welcome to the show, Asha.
Oh, it's a great joy to be with you. I'm very happy to be here.
I love it. It's fantastic. It's so nice to have people on the show that it's just a joy to be.
Well,
Nothing needs to happen. We don't need to talk about checklists and how we can manipulate the next move on social media. We're just we're just we just are, and
okay.
that's what I really appreciate about you as having you as a guest. So yeah, tell us a little bit. I would say, I don't know, imagine the person listening is in their late 20s, early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
They are um, creators, social media people, entrepreneurs. Yeah, what would you say to them when you just meet them on the street?
Everything in life really comes down to personal integrity and what your inner world is like. It's very easy to think that our happiness and our sense of well-being and our self-worth comes from this huge universe that's all around us, all the people around you who are accomplishing, what your face looks like, all that stuff. And it definitely has an effect on us, but all you're ever experiencing is your inner world. And when the day is done, you're inside your own head. And when the life is done, you're inside your own head. And who you are is the only thing that you take with you, not what you've accomplished. So pay attention. Don't waste a lot of time running in circles for things that aren't really going to matter. And I'm not suggesting, as some people do in my position or imagine, that therefore do nothing, accomplish nothing. Just the opposite. Give yourself wholeheartedly to whatever it is that you're trying to make happen, but keep your reality always from your point of origin so that everything you do really, really springs from the lasting part of yourself instead of just the superficial part of yourself.
Hmm, I love that. That's a great summary.
It also allows you to be very bold. I mean, just because you always have yourself. So, on a certain level, you have nothing to lose. So, if you're building inner wealth, so to speak, through character and right behavior and a clear conscience and a loving heart, then the ups and downs of this world won't, you'll have to relate to them, but they won't define you. And so you can have much more courage and much more fun along the way, too.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing that I drew out of my learnings from the Course in Miracles as well. Is like, don't make the world so real. You know, I feel like when you're young, everything is just like that's how the world is, and everything's real. And yes, you can change it with a lot of work and blah blah blah. It's like at the end of the day, I feel it's very much up to our own interpretation of what life is about.
Well, I would add to that, we don't exist in a vacuum, self-evidently. The very body that you have, you took the intercession of a man and a woman for you even to have it, and it has a reality of its own, And we are also subject to group karma and cultural karma and all those different things. So we can't separate ourselves from the tapestry of life that we're part of. And so one of the ways, I mean, there's two ways to think about life. Either because my body is individual and I appear to have limited self-definitions and live separately than other sentient beings, we can think, well, I am alone. It's up to me. Maybe I'll get a few allies, but I really have to constantly be trying to make my life happen. The other way to understand it is took a lot of energy, a lot of forces outside my control to get me to this point, and I am part of this tapestry. Tapestry is the best word because you have a tapestry and all the threads go in both directions a great distance. You can't take a scissor and just cut your little piece out. You're connected in all ways. And so if we think instead of this great tapestry, this greater reality that we're part of, and we try to attune ourselves to where it's come from and where it's going, because the tapestry is actually already woven. So if we attune ourselves to where it's come from and where it's going, and then cooperate with that greater reality, we still get to have all the fun of being ourselves, but it's a much more integrated, a much more powerful, and also a much more secure way to live. It's not so scary as it
Mm,
is if you're just all by yourself.
mm. I love
And,
that.
and of
And
course, you can add God into it, which is a really good idea if you can go there. Just, it gets
yeah.
much better when you have an infinite loving power somewhere around you.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And what if somebody's thinking, well, that sounds a little bit too predeterministic. What if I just want to change the thread on that tapestry? What if I want to change? Well, how would you respond to that?
It's a little complex because what you're asking about really is karma. And what you have to think about is karma is not some mysterious power. Karma is momentum. Now, of course, you have to throw reincarnation into this because it really doesn't make any sense if you just popped out of nowhere and then go nowhere. So let's assume for the sake of the discussion that there's a before and an after of whoever you are right now. So that when you're born, you're already in motion. I mean, think about your own childhood. Certain things interested you. You had certain inclinations right off the bat. You had certain conditions that you were born into that other people were not born into. Thousands of things, if you think about it, are already in place when you start. And even from the beginning, you show a certain inclination in certain ways, emotionally, in terms of your talents, your interests, everything like that. So, um, so it's not predetermined, but it's an object in motion. And if you're going down the freeway and you're going 80 and you're in the left lane, you can see the exit you want. It's right there. But you've got momentum, and if you don't see it soon enough, then you can get back to it, but you have to you have to go ahead, you have to find another exit, you have to get off to the right, you have to turn around, you have to hope that there's no detour. All these different things happen, which are all under your control to influence, but momentum has to be taken into account. And your
Mm,
karma is the momentum that you yourself have built. It wasn't done by anybody else. Every decision, every action, every thought, every feeling you have creates a vibration of energy. And that vibration of energy is stored in your chakras. That's what your chakras are. They're little buckets of your karma. But that karma was created by you, but that karma creates a momentum that now you have to deal with.
mm,
And so to a very large extent, someone who has the sensitivity can sort of predict the consequences of that momentum. It's going to take you 25 minutes to get off the freeway and get back to the exit because there's also building, and then you're going to miss the exit again and blah, blah, like that. And it's not that anybody's forcing you to, it's that you have already set it in motion. So if you don't like what the momentum you have is, then you have to start creating new momentum.
mm,
But you can't just erase it because it's energy that you yourself have planted. So you have to match it with energy that's moving in another direction. So that's how you feel like on some side it's predetermined, and the other side it's all up to you. In theory, you could change your karma in an instant if you could generate as much energy in a new direction as you have already generated in the direction you're going. But if you're in that car and it's going 80 miles an hour, you're not usually capable of just picking up the car by cosmic force and getting it off at the right exit because you've been speeding along the highway. So you
Yeah,
have to put out commensurate energy to turn it around. And that leads us to all kinds of other interesting questions, such as how do you generate energy? How do you get the mastery to do it? Leads you
yeah,
in lots of very interesting directions then.
beautiful. I want to talk about that in a second. Before we go there, I just want to, kind of draw the bridge to an analogy in my life that kind of like
Mhm.
illustrates that
Okay.
momentum I feel. And so I have an agency and have a tea brand. Okay, like
Mm.
looking at this conversation from an entrepreneurial perspective,
Okay.
the agency I've had for 8 years, right? So there's a certain type of momentum behind the agency.
Right.
Um, and I have a team of 3 people. The tea brand is 2 years old.
Okay.
Um, however, because I was able to create such emotional momentum for myself,
Right.
the tea brand was able to catch up quite quickly to the
Very,
agency.
very.
Um, and it hasn't surpassed the agency, and I'm talking
Mhm.
about in terms of revenue now, just because that's easily
Yeah.
measurable at the
Sure.
moment. It hasn't surpassed the agency, but it's interesting to see that the tea brand, because I come from a merchant's family, you know,
Uh-huh.
like that, I feel there's just like some subconscious, it's a product. I'm a merchant. I can
Uh-huh.
sell something if it's a great quality, it's at a good price, like I
Yeah.
feel like this is me, it's my path. You know what I mean? And
Uh-huh.
not that the agency wasn't my path,
Right.
it's actually called Love Pixel Agency, right? So it's everything is about love. It's about making love tangible in the digital space. It's a very spiritual agency by
Right.
itself, right? Um, so it was interesting to see, like that's how I started out my entrepreneurship journey with with this spiritual agency business, which is more digital. It's a
Uh-huh.
little bit more I wouldn't say it's more spiritual because both brands are very spiritual, but it's
Right.
like it's myself projected into those brands, right? One is
Right.
the agency where I help people and brands to, hey, we're gonna distill the essence of your brand and
Right.
create a wonderful brand experience and website for whoever visits your brand, right? That's
Right.
the agency. And then the tea brand is called the One with Tea.
Uh-huh.
And the goal there is to bring people into oneness, into an experience of oneness with themselves while
Mhm.
having tea. Now, I'm
Uh-huh.
not sure how many people who buy my tea get that experience, right? But ultimately, I think in a couple of years, people are gonna understand more and more about tea because tea is also every substance, every person has an energy, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Right.
tea is it's a quiet master, it's a quiet teacher for me,
Uh-huh. Huh.
and it allows for so much presence and exploration and beingness. The tea,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
that is something that I said I want to take this spiritual concept that tea has and make it a brand that people can consume, can buy, can interact with, can enjoy. So yeah, again, this is like I would say a very deep underlying ethos of the two brands. But
Uh-huh.
to wind back to the conversation we had about momentum, it's very interesting how easily it was for me to get momentum, the T brand, because it felt such a like it felt not destined, but it felt like it was meant to be in a way. Like I know my ancestors were merchants. It's like I
Oh yeah, no.
felt
See,
this before. You know?
you were born into a stream of energy when you were in the astral world before you took this incarnation. You had certain energies in your chakras, which was your karma, certain forces, sources, certain anticipated possibilities, certain necessary lessons that were coming up to the top of the pile to be acted upon. And with your own intuition and with the help of whatever guardian angels or gurus you have in that world, you surveyed and you saw a vibration that would match your vibration. And in this case, as it happens, because your karma was for success, you chose a vibration that would move you towards success. Sometimes the karma we have is failure. So, because that's the lesson that we need to learn is failure, not success. So we choose a vibration that will facilitate that karma. But,
Mm.
this whole question about destined or not destined, it's a hard question to answer because it's a kind of yes or no question.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, but that's why I use the word momentum instead, because
Mm.
momentum can be redirected by the
Yes.
conscious use of the will.
Mm-hmm.
But even the ability to use the conscious will, you've got to have the momentum to be able to want to do that. So
Mm.
it never answers satisfactorily, that
Yeah.
question. But what you're describing is exactly what I'm talking about. And you practiced with the agency. You got certain, because as an entrepreneur, you understand, which I have those same abilities. So I understand there's a certain genericness to being an entrepreneur. That's why the word exists. A person who can see nothing, who can look at nothing and see something, and then basically recognize what the pattern is that it is of manifestation, which is very obvious to some of us and not obvious to everyone. But it's a generic skill. And
Mm.
once you manage to kind of understand how you make something from nothing, you can make multiple somethings from nothing. You know, at a certain point, it becomes related to the specific skill. But up to a certain point, it's the same no matter what you're starting, no matter
Yeah.
what you're doing. I was involved here in my Ananda community, helping to start a school, and I'm not. I work with children sometimes, but I'm not a children's teacher, and I'm not a trained educator. But I understood how to start things, and I was able to play a central role in that school until it really became a school. And then all of a sudden, I was way beyond myself, and I had to pull in other friends, who knew who were professional educators of children. But I'm not sure they could have started it
Mm. Exactly.
because
Yeah.
that was my part, and then their part was to make it what it's supposed to be. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's great
I
fun
know.
once you
It's
get it
great.
right.
And, once things grow into a size of where they take its own momentum, like the right people will find themselves. I also see that within myself, for example, like I'm more the person who plants the seeds. I'm
Mhm,
not the one watering it constantly,
mhm,
like I'm more like a catalyst type person.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
because I enjoy that part. I enjoy the succinct distillation of something into like this is what we should do. This is how approximately how we should do it. Let's do it. You
mhm.
know.
And
So.
that's someone has to have the confidence. There's a few people in my life, one man in particular. He's absolutely brilliant as long as he's not at the front of the line. He can be second in the line, and then he's fearless. But if he's number one, he just freezes. So
Mm.
it's like everybody has a part to play. And I
Yeah.
like being at the front of the line because I just enjoy that position, to a
Yeah.
certain extent. Um, anyway, we're all different because we all have different karma.
Yeah.
We're all everybody is trying to get to the center. I mean, really, literally, we're trying to get to the center of ourselves. But it depends on where you are on the rim of the wheel, which way is into the center. Because if you're on the west and on the east side, you will literally go in opposite directions to get to the same point.
Mm.
And even if you become dogmatic about it, you'll when you're heading east and you meet the people who are going west, then you have a war over whether you're supposed to go west or east. But
Mm.
it was because we're all supposed to come to the center. Because once you're in the center, you're equidistant from everything.
I love that. What a great analogy. That is wonderful. How do people find out where they are
Oh,
in that
usually by
in that?
horrible suffering. I mean, Usually, I mean, how do you get good judgment from experience? How do you get experience from bad judgment? I mean, that's why when I was speaking at the beginning, when you asked for general advice, really make your sense of self who you are becoming inwardly. And then that gives you tremendous courage to experiment outwardly. Because whether you succeed or fail in the moment, so to speak, or in measurable terms, and of course, money is an extremely measurable way of telling whether the energy is working or not. Um, you can always take what happens to you and use it creatively to understand yourself on a deeper level. And if you just sit there and wait till everything is certain, you don't create any flow of energy that will bring you new experiences that will teach you. So
Mm.
sometimes people don't have a clear intuition about what they should do, so they don't do anything. But by doing nothing, you're not developing your consciousness, and therefore there's no power that's going to give you clear intuition.
Mm.
And this is why we have to find a way to experiment without with less fear. I mean, of course, one is often a little unsure. You're moving forward, you hope it's right. But if your ideas, Swami Kriyananda, my teacher, one of the things he said, it's really interesting. The secret of prosperity is creativity, is what he said, which is fundamentally, if this didn't work, I'll try something else. And if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. And I'll just keep trying something else until finally I figure out, I correct all the misunderstandings, and then all of a sudden it's working. A lack of creativity often leads to a lack of prosperity because there's no ability to respond with a new idea. And, that is why some people are more inclined toward creating new things, obviously, because it occurs to them to do so. But all of us are a unique expression of the divine. I mean, you and I are, both of our faces are on this screen, and quite clearly we're two different people. You had a whole different idea in the astral world of what a body should be, quite clearly different than mine. And nobody's going to mistake me for you because it's just obvious we had a different idea. We're both an original creation. And there
Mhm.
will never be another exactly like you, even though same nose, same eyes, same mouth, same basic equipment. But originality is not just doing something different. It's doing something that comes from your own point of origin.
Mm.
And that's really where the power comes from my own point of origin, which leads us back, of course, into the spiritual realm, because we have no conscious capacity to create ourselves. We find ourselves created because there is this font of originality, this constantly renewing itself within us. Just our physical bodies start with that, but 5 minutes from now, you're somebody different than you were before. You and I are talking, people will listen, and energy will shift. And how magically it shifts, how powerfully it shifts, how effective those shifts are, that's where our free will comes in. How we make use of that which our karma brings us.
Hmm. I love it. Using using time wisely while you're
Yeah,
here.
yeah, using your time wisely while you're here. And when we pass, when I was about 18, which was quite young, when I really discovered self-realization, inner spirituality. I was raised in an extremely ethical family, with very high principles. And we weren't atheistic, but we weren't really religious either. I had God was a neutral for me, but spirituality, I knew because of past lives. I knew that there was something truer than anybody was telling me. And
Mm.
I managed to find it when I was 18. I found books by Swami Vivekananda, who was a disciple of this Indian master Sri Ramakrishna from the late 1800s. And somewhere in all of that, I mean, this was many years ago now, so I just have vivid images rather than details. Somewhere in there, I had a very, what in memory is, I stayed up all night thinking about this, but I don't know if that's really what it was, but that's what it felt like. At that time in my life, I didn't even know anybody who had died, what to speak of having any personal relationship with death. I had a very protected, privileged beginning. But I had this picture in my mind of dying, of myself dying. And it wasn't fearful in any way. And what was very interesting is it was a very vivid picture of being on a deathbed and having lived a good life and having all these people who loved me being around me, just sort of as I gradually exited this body. Subsequently in my life, I've actually been at that scene. I've never been the one dying yet, obviously, but I've been there when other people were dying. And the scene that I projected when I was 18 is very similar to places I've been since then in this life, in this world. But the point when I was younger was that I realized no matter how many people loved me, and I've always had an optimistic attitude and relationship, so I assumed my life would be successful and that I would have lots of people who loved me and would be sorry to see me go. No matter how many people loved me or how much I had loved them, the process of death would be the absolute necessity to withdraw from every single outer relationship. The only thing I would have was my own consciousness. I didn't even know I had just learned the word consciousness at that point. All I would have was my own consciousness, and everything that I had done would matter. It wouldn't be a waste of time on any level, but it would matter because of who I had become from doing it. Because when I left this world, that's what I would take with me. And just really at that point, and I've never wavered, consciousness. That's basically changing my own consciousness. Everything is a means to an end and a delightful adventure and sometimes an awful experience, because we all suffer. But the only purpose of it has been who I become because, I'm of an age now. I was 22. And when I was 22, I did not imagine that that the same I would be as old as I am now. That's the only way I can put it. That
Hmm.
I would still be here in exactly the same way I was when I was 22, except my costume would have changed a bit.
Hmm.
And a lot that was in front of me when I was 22 is now behind me. But what I have become through it is still with me with a tremendous power. And now I'm closer to the end than the beginning. So that deathbed scene or whatever is going to happen, I don't care. It's in God's hands, but it matters. And if we can run that dual track all the way through, that's what makes a successful life. Whether you die rich or poor, success or failure, if you're running the inner track at the same time, you'll have done what you came to do.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. I like this. How do I say this in English? There's a German. I know the German word. Let me look it up real quick. Rückbesinnung.
The Germans
Rückbes.
always have magnificent words, so
It says in German it's called Rückbesinnung. So
okay.
that's a boring word. Yeah, of course. So in English, it's a recentering, a recollection. Yeah, but
Yeah,
recentering fits better. So a recentering to
right.
that, not forgetting to cultivate your inner path.
There you have it.
Um,
There you have it.
because when you grow up and when you're younger, you think everything's outside, right?
Yes.
Um, but not to forget about that spiritual path, right? And that's why I called the podcast to the successful spiritualpreneur, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, because everybody wants to be successful, right? Like,
Right.
we don't want to listen to a failure podcast. Um, we want to give them positive, successful, encouraging information. So that successful side is more, I would say, the materialistic side
Right.
of our experience, of our human experience, right? And the spiritualpreneur is like the person doing something, right? But spiritually, right? The inner path.
Right.
And for me, that intersection of those two
Right.
worlds is where everything's at.
That's exactly right. That's exactly correct.
I
And
can live like that's why also, for example, tea for me is the alignment of mind, body, and spirit.
yes. Uh-huh.
That's what
Uh-huh.
tea does for me. It always brings me back to a little bit closer to my center,
Uh-huh. Very
right?
good. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think in general, like finding that balance point in one's life is your task, whoever you are listening. Where is that balance point? Because it might be that you want to have a super fast life with, 500 sports cars and five boats and
Mhm.
two airplanes, right? um, or you want to have a little bit slower life.
Right.
Anything is possible.
Right. Anything is possible. And also in the midst of what you're doing to keep a sense of priorities. And of course, times are different. When you're raising young babies, one reality is in place. When you're birthing a business, one reality is in place. But it isn't, we can't abandon our the primary important things for a temporary. And that's, I mean, and then you come to the word temporary. Everything is temporary
Hmm.
except that which is eternal. But
I love
we,
that. Just
I
to
think, you
just
understand?
like that the thread of thought of like everything, abandoning the primary for the secondary for a
Right.
while, right? Like, just to draw an analogy in my life in the past few
Mhm.
months, I've been very active, informed with the tea brand, trying
Uh-huh.
to find new suppliers for matcha because it's such a high in
Uh-huh.
demand item. Like, everybody talks about the matcha shortage and blah blah blah, right? So this finding new suppliers and like find
Mhm.
doing these things in form has kind of like taken over my mind in the last few months. It's very interesting. After, I would say, the eclipse season in September, end of September was done, it all started to shift. So
Mhm.
now, since I would say 10 days, it's like a completely different energy. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
exactly.
So I'm also starting to feel and going with the flow and the tides of like, ooh, now is the time to like really dive and analyze and be informed. But I was also noticing that oh, I forgot my family a little bit. It's like, oh, I have a wife, I have a child. I didn't know. Um, so
Right.
it's interesting that you say that. Like, if I literally forgot the primary a little bit for the secondary there for a month or two. So I'm happy you said that.
And everything is always shifting. I mean, in this realm, time is real, and it just this is why you build an inner kingdom that you never actually vacate. And this is your point of origin. There's a constancy, of course. Meditation practices, being in nature, whatever it is that feeds a sense of a more lasting reality than the day, or a point of rest within yourself that you can access, which is also a point of intuition, which helps you to be more efficient and effective in what you do. If we're always just moving from one outward focus to another, without a resting point, when I before I discovered before I met Swami Kriyananda and got on the spiritual path, everything was very dynamic because I was always a very active person. But my picture of myself was that I never knew. I felt like I was that like my life was a big ice hockey game, but I was the puck. And so it's just like the blow would come and I would sail across the ice and people would cheer or boo, but I never had any sense of where anything was coming from. And I couldn't even tell what was winning and losing. But it was interesting, it was entertaining, kept me distracted. But when I met Swami Kriyananda, and that he himself was a pole star for me, like a fixed point of reference. But then everything I learned from him also became a fixed point of reference. I had a transcendent sense of values, which are not hard to imagine, but really rooted. And so I could always measure things against something that was fixed, but not dogmatic fixed, but fixed because it related to the source of happiness, really. Because that's what everybody is seeking. Every single thing that anybody does is because you think it's going to increase your happiness and decrease your suffering. And even if your judgment is terrible and your decisions are really stupid, and I often say this to myself, it seemed like a good idea at the time, or else I wouldn't have done it.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna take that up in my vocabulary. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
I mean, and then you just forgive yourself because, yeah, it did seem like a good idea at the time. I applied my best, and even if my best was incredibly misguided, if I hadn't thought it was a good idea, I wouldn't have done it.
Hmm. Very
And
true.
very true.
Yeah. Reminds me of my current life situation. I love
Okay.
you
Uh-huh.
just go back. You say something, I was like, I fill it in with like my life. Um, so right now I'm in the midst of putting the tea brand on TikTok Shop.
Oh,
And for
okay.
people who don't know, TikTok Shop is kind of like Amazon, but a little bit more like the Wild West. Why?
Okay.
Why is it like the Wild West? Well, because in comparison to Amazon is like a marketplace. Like here's the product, here's the price, here's how much is in it. Do you want it? And who
Yeah.
basically has the best at the cheapest price? That's kind of like Amazon, right? With TikTok, it's different because with TikTok, you see a lot of people that have the product in their hands like this. Look, this is my matcha. I'm gonna make it for you. This is how you do it. Like it's basically yeah, you just see people that have the product and use it. So for us humans, it's a lot more like, wow, this must be great, right? And you see it's being used, it's great, it sounds healthy or great or whatever it is they sell. um, so from that stance, the sales on TikTok are a lot more subjective than they are on Amazon. You
Yeah.
understand?
Right, I do.
So it's more impulsive buying on TikTok.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the reason why we want to be on TikTok because we have a great product and we want to get into the hands of more people, right?
Yeah.
So really, there's more of an opportunity on TikTok.
Mhm.
And you were saying, I was saying that
I
because why was I saying that? I don't know. Um,
know sometimes what
now I'm
you
explaining
were,
what TikTok versus Amazon is.
but
Um,
actually, I'm really going to finish your thought, but I'm very glad, very interested to hear what you're saying. Did you?
yeah. So the reason why, oh yeah, the idea, oh yeah, it seemed like a good idea at that time. Okay, so I'm
Right.
in the midst of getting the brand on TikTok Shop. But it's like an operation, like it's a whole thing. I think you need to order big quantity because you need to send a bunch of samples to people who can make videos with your product, right? Without buying it because
Yeah.
you're basically giving it to them for free so they can make a video. Um, yeah, so I'm just like in the middle of like ordering a lot of units, printing a lot of matcha cans, and like the whole
Yeah.
thing is like I can feel how I'm like starting this whole engine and machinery, building a lot of momentum with this, and then I hope it's not going to be an idea that seemed good at the time, but actually an idea that still seems good at the time when the time comes.
Well, I hope so too. It's very interesting what you're saying because the whole social media, the whole fact that you and I are talking to each other, all this that's happened, which I know some of you guys have just grown up with it, but I've come, I was well past
Yeah,
the midpoint of my life before all this began to happen. And on one side, it has so depersonalized things. I seldom go into a store anymore. There's some poor stores around me that I want to keep in business, so I go in sometimes, but I seldom go in because it's just so much easier. which is depersonalizing, which is terrible from
Mhm.
the point of view of human nature. No relationships anymore. And then simultaneously, you and I are talking to each other, and we're talking directly to, all the people who are listening. So we're also this same technological phenomenon has created an enormous potential for personal contact. Not quite the same, and really not the same as being with someone in person,
Yeah. Yeah.
but nonetheless, and all that personal contact is also really changing our relationship to the whole planet. Not necessarily, it's not really turned to the best, but still it's a factor. Literally, at one point when America was at war with somebody, I happened to be in India at the time, whenever that war was that started, America started bombing somebody. My Indian friend said to me, "Oh, you Americans, you're always at war with someone." And having only lived in this country, I thought, oh my gosh, he's right. Just seeing yourself from the outside. But then I read a story, literally, that whatever country the bombers were attacking, there were two girls who had become friends over the email. And while one father was in the air dropping bombs, the woman in that country, the girl in that country, was talking to her friend. And you can keep doing that for a while, but at a certain point, you're going to have to stop
Mhm.
because it's become personal. And no matter what the whole big story is around it, it's become personal. So even just the little thing you're talking about, here is my tea bag and I'm drinking the tea, is so different than when I go on Amazon and I just just exactly as I say, I find just the right brand with just the right thing.
Yeah.
But now I know the guy who makes it.
Mhm.
And I'm
Yeah.
so much more interested in helping him than I am in helping the picture on my screen. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's amazing to see the seeds before you really know what the plant looks like. You
Yeah.
know, you're using the phrase Wild West, but particular seeds are being planted, and there will be a time when we say, "Oh yeah, that this is the inevitable fruit of that, positive or negative." But here it is.
Yeah.
Very
It's
interesting.
very, it's very exciting, and people now more than ever they crave that connection.
Yes,
You know,
exactly. Because
it's
we become isolated at the same time that we become connected.
it's so funny.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I do this podcast too, because I want to hang out with cool people.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
I want to hang out with people who are thought leaders in a way that have cultivated their consciousness to sharpen their edge and their sword for however many years in a certain discipline or area, because it's just more interesting to talk to those type of people for me, right? But yeah, as you said, I think yeah, in overall, like when you look at it, it's like we've gotten more time for things we actually want to have time for. Like we don't need to go to the store. I'm just gonna buy my dog food on Amazon, right? But I now have time to like talk to you or talk to people who I actually want to talk to. And then yes, it'd be really nice to meet in person one day, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
I would have never known about you without the internet or social media. At least now I know you. Now there's a potential that we can meet in the future in person. Who knows?
Exactly. Exactly. And even without that, there's still, in a more subtle way. I mean, I don't mean subtle by technology, but I mean just really people find each other. It's fascinating times.
Yeah, it's
Because
really
everything.
cool to see like the feedback loop also because internet educates, internet allows access to information, finding the right people, reaching out to those people, talking to those people, right? Like we're basically reprogramming ourselves, choosing which podcast do I want to create. I'm a creator. Other people just listen. Like which podcast do I want to listen to? So basically, like they're programming themselves with information. I want to
Right.
be a successful spiritual entrepreneur.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
or some might just listen to the Ananda podcast if there is one,
Yeah.
right? And it's just more geared towards spiritual information.
And you and your generation are creating this universe. I'm enjoying it from the other side. I mean,
Yeah,
before we started this recording, as you know, and I'm just saying it for the listeners, I was not capable of getting myself into the right place, and I had to get my what I call my young friend to come over and just make it work for me. And it was so natural to her, and it's just not natural to me. So I was at the forefront of a really big movement when I was 22. It was meditation and Eastern teaching and self-realization and community, a whole lot of things that were vegetarianism, which is like nobody even thinks of that as a revolution anymore. Now you have to be vegan and beyond.
Yeah.
But I was at the forefront of all of that, and then I watched it become mainstream.
It's
And
incredible.
so, and so now you guys, I mean, I'm very much enjoying watching you guys because you were born for the next wave.
Yeah. It's so
And
cool to watch just
yeah,
life. You know,
yeah,
like I'm grateful for what came before and what comes after because I
yeah,
know that the before generation maybe wasn't that easy either, right? There's their own set of challenges, right? Today, you know, I as a parent think a lot freer than my parents,
yeah,
right? There's other
yeah,
stuff that they had to deal with that didn't allow them to be as free thinkers, right?
yeah.
But yeah, now different challenges. You know, kids nowadays they spend a lot of time on electronics, so I need to control that for my little child. I have a 7-year-old. Um, so yeah, I think it's always the same. You know, like consciousness rises, but also the challenge rises, right? So it's always
Well, karma's karma.
yeah,
Everybody is a complete story. I find it just so amazing, just being out, seeing somebody walk on the sidewalk, and I think that I just drive right past them, but they have a whole enormous story. And
yeah,
they're right in the middle of it, and they will always be in the middle of it. They will always be themselves. They will always be, and they have friends and family and heartaches and successes, and every single one of us. I mean, this is what softens the heart.
mm,
This is what will, not yet, but will eventually bring a much more harmonious and loving world than the one we're in right now. Right now, everybody's trying to find ways to be murderous with one another virtually, to just find all these different ways to be separated. But we're all exactly the same.
yeah.
Everybody wants the same
It's
thing.
so fun. I think like my generation, we're just like, come on, guys, you still
Yeah.
know wars, and then come on, it's like yeah, it's we don't really feel that we have the power yet to stop it, but as soon as all these old people die away that think that wars and greed and that all that stuff is the way, you're just gonna die.
Well,
You know,
this is,
no matter
this,
how powerful
yeah,
you are, you will
yeah.
you know, can extend your life however many thousand years you want. We will take over as the new generation.
I'm so glad. This is what Yogananda predicted. Yogananda predicted that there would be a turbulent time, which is really, that there would be some real turbulence on the whole planet. You can see it building. The Earth itself is annoyed with us and is not cooperating, and many people are selfishly doing all kinds of horrible things. And that energy, he said, would break up a lot of what is established now. But on the other side of it is you guys who just like, come on, enough already. What is the point?
Mhm.
And all of this technology is uniting us. You can
Yeah,
fly across the world in a half a day. You can talk to anybody in real time. You can see their face. And it just all of that fighting just makes no sense anymore.
makes no sense. And when I look at my child,
Hmm.
you know, it's the world is upside down. Always has been. You know what I mean? Like, just give my child $1 billion. See what happens then. You know, it's like they're so wise. They're
Yeah.
incredible. Like he has told me things, and I don't know. It's just I'm not worried at all. Well, we were, you know, like for me, a friend once said, "What darkness is just a worthy opponent." I
Yeah.
like that because that means we already won, which we have. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
the light's never gonna die, the dark's never gonna. It's just, it's. I
Yes.
think.
I tend to think I use the word shadow. I like the word shadow because shadow is simply exists. First of all, it takes light to create shadow, and
Mm,
shadow is is created because something has blocked the light. But as soon as you remove that block, the light is completely unchanged.
Mm.
So we're dealing with a lot of shadow on the planet right now, but doesn't in any way diminish light. I've also in the last few years had the opportunity to travel a great deal. Really, I went to 50 cities in 23 countries in the last few years. So,
Wow.
it's been fun. And I started out pessimistic and I've ended up very optimistic because there just is an enormous amount of commitment to light and
Yes.
people acting on it, not just sort of a
Mm.
superficial dreamer, but just people quietly, steadily, powerfully creating alternatives that are
I
much more harmonious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like I like the word silent majority.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I like that
The
word.
the media, the news itself is oriented toward the shadow. So we're not really getting a clear picture. That's why traveling a lot and just really feeling and meeting. Of course, I meet uplifted people because other people don't come and see me. But
Mm.
nonetheless, it just showed on what you saw on the street, even just even a simple thing like the number of vegan restaurants in countries all over the world.
Yeah.
How did veganism become financially viable for so many people? It just really tells you. I mean, when I became a vegetarian, my relatives insisted I give my whole dietary plan to my doctor because they thought I was going to die. He pronounced me healthier than with a healthier possibility than anyone else and that I would outlive them all. But they really thought you'll
Yeah,
die if you're a vegetarian.
yeah, it's the
But now
conscious.
no one even thinks about it.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see how life evolves, you know?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I think we've covered it. Keep on keeping on, have courage, find your point of origin, act from that, and maybe you should sell your products on TikTok Market. and
Is
maybe and maybe your tea brand is a good brand. How about that?
That's right.
But what I'm
And especially
yeah,
if it comes from a great center point.
exactly. That's what we want. But I very much enjoyed talking to you also because you open up worlds I don't know about. You give me hope for the future. And I'm sure that the people who listen to this podcast are all doing what they can to move things upward and ever expanded. So always just don't quit. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other and with a joyous and a happy heart and everything else will follow from that.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, coming on the show. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom, all your heart. It's been a true pleasure.
Well, for me also, my friend. Very nice to meet you. Good luck with everything that you do. Okay.
Thank you, Asha. I'll let you know, and who knows, maybe I'll send you one of my matchas one day.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll drink it. Okay, very good. Looks beautiful. All
Thank
right.
you. All right. Well, you have a wonderful week. Thank you
You
so
too.
much.
Okay, God bless. Bye bye.